Dun 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 dun. Holy smoke. Holy smoke. What do we have here? Okay. I'm going to fix this thing. Why? Because I can. This is actually a 1979 Peavey Mark III 24 channel mixer. Holy smoke. What a beast. It's going to need a lot of work, at least in the cleanup department. The lovely base here where all the studio marking tape and things was placed is extremely sticky. I could pretty much glue myself to it. It is in a Super Duty road case, which has probably been living in all 40 some years of its life, and which all of the foam has rotted away, and it's lovely and it smells great. Not really, but you can actually see some of the foam is sort of dripped on here. But this comes to me, it's actually mine now, and I intend to rehabilitate it. But this is really old school analog engineering, and I like it for a lot of reasons. If you notice, for a 24 channel mixer, this is kind of big, and the channels are spaced out farther, and we have these stubbier knobs. Now the stubbier knobs give a more tactile feel, I think, and they give you more room for a larger set of hands. But because they don't sit up so high and they're not so narrow and they're not these itty bitty little pots, you didn't break them off. This stuff is heavy duty. It's equipment like this that got Peavey that reputation that I always joke about, and you can say it with me if you remember. What survives nuclear fallout? Cockroaches and vintage Peavey. So I'm going to be taking this out of the road case, rehabilitating it, and working on it. So we got a lot of switches that we got to clean up. We got monitor outs, we've got main outs, we've got mono and stereo outs. We've got a power cord that is going to be in need of replacement. It's been smashed in the case one too many times, and it's full of sticky nastiness from the case. We're going to clean the case up and maybe paint it, try to make it look nice, try to make all this look nice, because that's what I do. But these jacks, despite the fact that the chrome is all faded off of the nuts, I'm sure if we give them a good cleanup, they'll probably work. This looks like good old school switchcraft. That's just pretty tough. Each input, we have our high Z input. We have a pre and a post send and return. So that should make it pretty cool to do, you know, monitoring and stuff. Should be really versatile. I'm liking this. I haven't plugged it in yet to see if it explodes. I've just been told it works. But before I even bother with all of this, we're just going to take it out of its road case and give it a bath. Wow. What a beast. Some of the screws are here, some of the screws are popped out, some are missing, whatever. But I think the reason that this thing is still alive and has all its knobs is probably the road case. And with how rough this road case is, you can tell this has been a lot of places. And it's probably heard a lot of music. Maybe somebody famous. I don't know. Mixer's this big, and with this much touring time on it, we're definitely not garage band items. So maybe this has heard some really good music. I don't know. It's probably heard a lot of crap music too. For all I know, this was, you know, playing the county fair circuit. I don't know. But anyway, we're going to try to rehabilitate this. Project number one, just get it out of the road case. And we're going to go down each and every little section, and we're going to pull all the knobs off, and we're going to scrub all the dirt and wipe all the dirt and scrub all the dirt and wipe all the dirt. And I'm not going to film that because that's boring. But once we get that done, we'll put a new power cord on it, take a look inside, make sure there's no bloated, leaking, ready to explode capacitors. And as long as that's not the case, we should be ready to power up, and we'll see how this thing rocks. Well, we're going to clean all the pots too while we're in there. Some of these things have a really good tactile feel, They feel nice and loose, and then there's a few that don't. But these old school big pots usually survive. Just need a cleaning. Faders all feel good. Look at those big old slider knobs. That's so different than what we have now. Isn't that fun? Mr. V has a mixer that's basically the same age as Mr. V, off by maybe 6 months. Wow. Okay, kids, well, here's surprise number 1. And this will blow your mind because it blew my mind. I was expecting this to be a mixer in a case. A mixer in a case, right? That's what you normally get. I was wrong. I unbolted the stuff here. We lift it up. The mixer is the case. The case is part of the mixer. So here's all of our stuff. There's our power supply right over there. Let's see, can we get enough light? And then a spring reverb. Wow. How cool. So the mixer is not going to live without its case. This does not have a metal bottom. What was I thinking? Okay, well, we're still going to clean the dirt up, because this thing's got cooties. But what the heck? Check that out. An old Accutronics tank. I'm sure it's a different impedance, but I'm curious if that's a 4-spring or a 6-spring or what. That's so cool. That's an analog reverb, man. I was looking at another smaller old mixer that I knew had a reverb, but wow, what a reverb. That's always what I've kind of wanted anyway, was an old school mechanical reverb on my mixer. I don't know what that bar is for. I'm trying to see what this is, or what that does. I don't know what that's supposed to support. But these two have to stay together. That's the power supply. Huh. Caps look healthy, what I can see. I don't see any leakage, physical leakage. So, give it a bath and then we'll try to fire it up. Holy shnikes, how cool is this? Okay, this is just a quick brief thing. The knobs are off on this end of the board. I'm cleaning it. I'm taking the knobs off and cleaning all of the stuff. But just take a look at the lettering from here to over here where I haven't gotten it. I have no idea if the camera is going to see the difference. But with the naked eye, oh my goodness. The white over here is almost completely white. Maybe a little off-white. But over here, it's beige. Look down there, and then look back here. Just cleaning the dirt off of this is making it look so much better. There's still a lot more fixing to do, and it's going to get done over the next few days. But anyway, I was just impressed at how well this is cleaning. Actually, let's look up. I haven't cleaned that section yet. There you go. Now you can see both sides at the same time. Not cleaned, cleaned. Not cleaned, cleaned. Okay. Okay, so I'm a couple days into the Peavey project here, and I got the old girl out of its chassis. Power supply is just sitting up here. I got it clipped where it's not going to fall. Detaching the power supply from the mains is down under here, and it's all individual tabs, so I'd have to photograph it to make sure I got the right voltages on the right thing. So I just decided it was easier to not detach it. So that's what I'm doing. There's our output transformers for our audio outs. There's our main board. That's our main board, which every one of these probably had, where all the mixes come into. Up here are input boards. We have a board for each input group of 4. So 4 XLRs and ins and outs and things are up here. And then for each 2 channels there's another board here. And just based on the size of these boards, which, considering this is a 24 channel, there's going to be 12 of these boards and 6 of these boards, right? Yeah, 6 times 4, 24. Just looking at how the components are laid out, you know, you can look at the solder joints. First of all, they're big solder joints. The components are big. You know, that's probably a little bit of why these lasted. Because they're a little bit larger, the solder joints are bigger and give more strength. It looked like they've been hand soldered a lot. It doesn't look like this was done necessarily with a wave soldering machine. I mean, there's plenty of solder on those connections. I mean, some of them almost to the point of excess. But, I mean, they're these mega solder connections. No wonder these things held up. And on top of that, because everything's big, this is accessible to a general technician. If I go topside and I see all the little op amps, because there are op amp chips up there, they're all in sockets. You can just unplug and plug a new op amp in if one blows out. You know, these were very serviceable. It didn't take somebody with extreme precision to fix this. This could be repaired by a general electronics tech. And that is, I think, probably the biggest reason that these things are still around and still working and everything. If they broke, you could just fix them. Yeah, so far so good. I gotta clean up the case and do some painting and things, but I just thought it was wild to see the inside of this. I got the top side all cleaned up and got a ton of grub off of that, so anyway, we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so back to part whatever of the Peavey mixer. This is the power board, and you know it's the power board because it says Mark III Power, the part number, in solder. How cool. But anyway, got the Peavey mixer working, and it does work. The reverb works, the channels work, the channels aren't really scratchy. I got the bottom of it painted. I gave it a quick and dirty paint job just to cover up all the million scuffs on the case. But when we plugged it in and hooked it up, we had a distinct 120 hertz hum. And if you think 120 hertz hum, you should be thinking filter capacitors. And those are on the power board, those are here. So 60 hertz hum's usually a ground loop problem, a grounding problem. I would suggest taking a look at Uncle Doug's video on the two different types of hum. So on the back of our board here we have our caps, which are soldered in very grand fashion. There's a lot of solder on these. I mean, a lot. So, especially on this puppy over here, which this one looks like it might have, I don't know, maybe it might have been replaced at some point. I don't know. Could be. It's probably, no, you know what, this is all original stuff. It's just, what's weird is these are all Marcons, and this is an Illinois, which is kind of the weird one. At least I think it's, no, it's not. It's a Marcon also. It's just a different film. Saw the gray film, I'm like, oh, this is an Illinois. So, as replacements, we have from our friends at DigiKey, where the parts are priced competitively, are usually of good quality, but darn it, I hate shipping. We have Nichicon capacitors. They should work just fine. So, what we'll do is we'll just start with the big one and work from big to small. This is a 1000 mic 50 volt. I think there's only one that's 1000 mic and 50 volt. So just remembering that the negative goes to this side of the board. We'll desolder it. I'm going to use a solder sucker tool here. You can get these commonly, well, you used to be able to get them commonly at the electronics store. But the one thing I do need before I get started is a garbage can. Let me explain why. One of the biggest ways that people screw up using these desoldering tools is they will squeeze the bulb while you're over the board. This thing is going to suck solder up into the housing here, and you definitely don't want to blow that all over your project. It's like it blows its nose all over your project, and you end up with a big mess. So what I do is I keep a trash can over here, and I squeeze the bulb quickly over the trash can to blow it out a few times. And then you squeeze the bulb, compress the bulb, heat up your piece, let go of the bulb, and the solder usually goes up inside. So we're going to try that. We're going to see how good of a melt we get here. If we get a lousy melt, it looks a little lousy, so what we're going to do is we'll just tin the tip of this just a little bit to get some better surface contact. And once she's all molten, we give it a good suck, and we got quite a bit of it. Quite a bit. Let's see if I can sit that up. I can't quite sit that up, so we'll go one more shot here. This is the one with the most junk on it. Try to get specifically right in this area. We're so close. That one pin, they bent these pins over very far. They just didn't go in through the through hole. So we'll see if we can use our soldering iron to loosen that one pin up. Maybe lift it straight. Lift that. There we go. Get that lifted straight. And then, once it's lifted, give it a little nip. So now I have just the tiny tine. And then we'll come back one more time with our desoldering tool. Tin the tip a little bit. Come right down over that hole that pin's at. Give it a second to get molten and give it a good pull, and that should have cleaned the excess solder out of the hole. Yep, and she wants to come out now, so there we go. So she came out without too much fight, a little bit. I hope I didn't bump the tripod too bad there. So now we got to go do the other side. Again, remember, negative lead is on this side. Don't want to do that backwards, otherwise I just wasted some money because my capacitor will go kaboom. Okay, so the first hole I got most. We'll come in here with our iron. See if we can get that loose and lift it. And it's laughing at me. I only need to go shove it and over this direction. Alright, so we got it loose. Go. Got it to sit up. Oh, and actually that through hole already cleaned out on the first draw, so there we go. So here's my dead 50 volt Marcon 1000 mic cap. So we'll find our equivalent 1000 mic 50 volt cap. Those are the 2200s. Here's our 50 volt 1000 mic. Nichicon. Is there any specific reason why I chose Nichicon? Well, yeah, kinda. The Nichicon capacitors are competitively priced and are generally of good quality. That's pretty much what it is. I don't feel like I'm paying an excessive brand tax to have Nichicon caps. But at the same time, I feel like I'm buying good caps as opposed to buying, generic value caps from mystery electronics shop or, a random eBay seller that I don't know. Okay, so we're in the through holes. Give our legs a nip here. 1, 2. I should have brought the good cutters. Actually, I do have a good cutter. This one cuts better. And we'll lay those two down snugly on the board so that they will not go anywhere. And then we'll solder them down and answer the phone. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Clean the dirt off of our tip. Wet our tip a little bit. Put down a solder pad. Old cap out, new cap in, and it goes the correct direction. These are both the same value, but new caps, for whatever reason, are a little smaller. There's the old, there's the new. So that's covered up with my hand so you can see. But yeah, they're a little smaller now. But that's okay. As long as they're the right value, we should be just fine. So we just need to go on and do the other caps, and then we'll see if our 120 Hertz hum is gone. Okay, so I've got my board recapped now, and we'll install it in the unit and see how we did. It's obviously important to try to document which direction the caps go so you don't screw up. Photographing things before you start, just grab your digital camera or your phone if it's more advanced than my phone. I use an old phone, but my phone will work. Take some pictures, try to see what's going on. I actually installed this cap. This one? Yes, I installed this cap backwards on accident. And when I flipped the board back over and looked, I said to myself, you know, I don't think it went that way, because this was the only one that had the polarity negative this way. So that'd be the positive out here. The speed bump is the positive. So this was the only cap that was not the other way. So I actually pulled my video that I took just a few minutes ago and double checked it. On my video, I was unable to see the stripe or the marking on the computer screen because it's not a huge video, but the light caught the speed bump, and it's like, you know what, I thought I did it when I flipped it over and looked at it. I thought I did it. Sure enough, I did. So snapping yourself a couple pictures will save yourself a few explosions potentially, because electrolytic capacitors that are installed backwards go pop. I would love to actually have a really glorious meter to check these. I actually do. My meter is supposed to do capacitance. I'll have to throw a couple of these on and see what happens. Okay, so we're into this a couple days now, and we're going to be recapping the Peavey board. And today in the mail, we got the capacitors for the project. And we have a lot of them, like to the tune of 300 of them. So these are the 2.2s, 50 volts. And then these are the ones I ordered in small quantity. That's the 100 mics. And a couple of voltages there, and then this should be the 22s. Yeah, the 22s. So lots and lots of capacitors. What we're going to do to try to make this go a little faster and to avoid errors as we go, I'm going to try to do these in clusters. So I'll take a look at my first group here. These are 2.2s, and they are all 50 volts. So these three are all the same cap. And up here I have, groups of caps that are the same cap. So I'm going to try to desolder things in groups that are the same cap. And I'm also going to try to I'm going to try to wipe the dirt off the board. But I'm going to try to mark these because some go some way, some go the other way. And I really don't want to mix them up because when you mix capacitors up, things explode. So that's this board, and then I have the other audio board. So let me decide which one's going to be faster to recap. Let's see. This one has a lot of 22s. I'm going to start with this one. I like this one better. So what I want to do with this is I will pick, and with my magic marker, I will mark the positive sides of each of these capacitors. And the positive side on the cap is the one with the ridge on it. So all of these go to this side. And then all of these go to, that one's an odd one, so these two go this way. And then this one goes that way. And then that way, with the dots put down, when I jump to my next bunch of capacitors, I'm not going to mix up. See, like this capacitor looks like the tail of it's blowing out. Some of these look like they're failing. And they certainly sound like they're failing. I'm hearing the audio noise. So we've got some 2.2s, and then these Nichicons up here at the top, I'm pretty sure are 22s. But whoever was working at Peavey that day was not kind enough to clearly put the caps in so you could read them thoroughly. So I'm going to try to desolder a few of these as a group, which would be these 2, 2, and then 2 inside here. So I'm going to try to, unsolder these 3 at a time, and then change them 3 at a time. And that's the plan. And then I have the dots here to clue me in on which direction the capacitor originally went, so I don't put it in backwards and watch something pop. So that's the plan. So let's get our solder tool. It looks like our first one, our big Nichicon, is here. And I need to bring the trash can around so I can blow this out into the trash can. So I will want to do that before I get going. Never forget your trash can. Okay, so back to soldering or desoldering. Squeeze the solder bulb, press it down there, hope for a good melt. There we go. Blow it out in the trash can. Do the one next to it. Blow it out in the trash can. Now I'm going to need to look again to see where the third one lives. This one's a resistor, so this is the cap. It's going to be a... And that one didn't melt. So if it didn't melt, it means I didn't have good contact. So let's try to get over that a bit better. Maybe add a little solder to it. Oh, come on, cooperate with me. There we go. And then the other side of these, I recognize are going to be here and here. And then this one's other side is all the way over here. So let me do the far side of this one just because it's going to be the harder one to remember where it is. Okay, so those appeared to have desoldered pretty easily. That didn't fight me very much. Sometimes they'll repin themselves down to the board when you go to pull them, but if they do that, you can take your ordinary soldering iron and just kind of give them a little push and they'll pop off the pad. Set them up. Yeah, those are coming. Should have brought a little needle nose pliers. That would have probably helped too. But the nippers, if you don't squeeze too hard, they work okay to pull things too. So those three sides are out. The other sides will come out too, but I'm going to just take a second to pull these and double check the value before I spit them out of the hole. So here's the first one. That is a 22 25 volt. So into the trash. I was actually thinking it would be a cool visual to have all of the replaced caps laying in a bin so everybody could see all of my handiwork and I could be like, look at all the caps I changed. But then I realized that would involve picking through the trash and I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to do that. Okay. The other thing that was a major bummer is the stock picture from this particular manufacturer showed the caps being a nice bright color as opposed to being black. So I figured, oh, I'm going to be changing all these black caps, I'll be changing them with these colorful caps and then it'll be easy to tell which ones I've actually changed. Wrong, they all came in there in black. So this first one was a 22, and because I dotted the board, I know which way my plus goes. Put that in there. Now, granted, assuming that all of these caps are dead is probably an exaggeration, but what happens with these type of electrolytic caps, I've read a lot of studies and stuff on them because I don't like to do work I don't have to do. But after stuff gets about 35 years old, these caps are usually in the process of dying, if they haven't already. Okay, the other one just fell out. We'll swap that one out. Come here, you. There we go. And that one looks like the back end of it's bloating. I could probably cut it with an X-Acto or something. And this is a 2.2 50 volt. So that would be not this bag, but the other bag. 2.2 50 volts. And it's a nice practice, and I'm going to try to do this across the board. As I'm installing these, I'm going to try to put the values in a place that they're legible in the future. So whomever may work on this in another 38 years will be able to clearly read the values on the capacitors. That's also a 2.2 50 volt. The good news is across all of this stuff, there's only about 4 different capacitor values that I have to worry about. And then we'll flip and clip. Make sure that these are those aren't floating too high. Looks like I only goofed a little bit and left this lead too long, but other than that we're okay and we're about ready to solder. There. Okay. And there we go. So 3 caps done, and about another 320 something to go. I estimate there's about 325 to 350 caps in this. I did sort of count quickly, but again, I counted quickly. I did order extras just in case there were some hidden ones. But again, there's so many repeated values in this unit that makes me feel a little better about it. And I need to double check that I'm going to be desoldering the correct ones this time so I don't undo what I just did over there. Again, that one didn't go. So I got to make sure we get a good melt. There we go. The other end of it would be this one over here. Having trouble getting good melt. If you're having trouble with the solder sucking tool, it's usually just because you're not getting enough melting across the board. So if you put a little fresh solder on there, help make really good physical contact, then up it comes. There's one. Here's number 2. And let's see, the third one, I'm going to want to look, is down here, so that's here and to there. That one cleaned up real good. And the other end of that would be here. Okay. So here we go. It's good to try to straighten these leads up as much as you can prior to pulling them out of the hole so they don't damage anything on the circuit board. And it's times like this I wish for a few minutes I had fingernails, and I don't. And as a technician, fingernails can be a problem. As a musician playing guitar, they can be a benefit. Sometimes I have better luck just using the soldering iron just to heat it up, because these just get just a minuscule amount of solder. It's not enough to fill the hole, but it's just enough to be a thorn in your side. So sometimes sitting these up with the soldering iron helps. And then if they don't want to pull out the other side, we'll go after them with the desoldering tool one more time. Okay, so that's should be a 2.2, or that's the 2225. It's our big one. And despite the fact that I know what's in all of these bags, I'm going to look again anyway. 2225, positive, this way. Because making mistakes with electrolytic capacitors means your new capacitor that you just put money into is now confetti, and hopefully it didn't take anything else out along the way. That one fell down here. That's the 2.2. So it's one of these. Thanks guys for taping them onto that reel so well. And then this is the one where the polarity is not going the same direction as the others. That one is the positive is this way, where everything else is coming to the middle. So glad I marked it. See, it really looks like the end of this is blowing out, and let's see, get a knife to cut that. See, the whole tail of this just looks a little deformed, and it looks like it's really trying to bust out of the back end. But anyway, after I get these 3 soldered, I'm just going to plow through the rest of the audio board with the camera turned off, because effectively it's watching the same thing happen over and over again with no significant differences. If there's anything that I find particularly challenging or interesting, be sure to put it on film. But for the most part, I think this is just going to be the same thing we just watched a few times. We just watched 6 of them, so just multiply that by a whole lot more times. When we get to the other board, we'll see if there's anything significant or interesting on that board. But this board is pretty much all a 2-value board. There's 2 different types of caps on here that need to be dealt with. Trimmed and ready for soldering. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we admire our handiwork. Double check that our positive leads match up with our markings, and they do. So now I move on to this area, and then to this area, and then to this area, and then here, then there, and then finally those 4 at the bottom. So there's still plenty more to go, but the good news is if I take a break, I can come back and look at where the capacitors where their dots are, where the dots are, and that will tell me where I'm at in my project. If I dot them before I remove them, then I'll know. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Saves me a chance to goof up, and it lets me know where I'm at. Okay, so back to work. See you in a little bit. Okay, so I've got this board all recapped, and there's all our new caps on there, looking nice and shiny, and tried to be careful and mark everything and double check my work. So before I declare this board ready to go back in the system, this plastic piece comes off, and that gives me easier access to come in here and, number one, wipe the grub off of here, and we will do that, and then we're going to go in with the contact cleaner and clean sliders and all of the stuff all the way up the board. So I'm just going to go up the board, clean all the pots, turn all the pots. These are double pots, so I have to make sure they're actually, let's see, a couple of them. Nope, no doubles on this board. No, yeah, aren't they doubles? No, not on this board. Doesn't matter. I'm going to make sure I get cleaner in there good, turn them back and forth, get them cleaned out. They weren't too bad, but still try to be efficient, get it done. Then we'll move on to the next board. Yay! How long did it take me to cap that? I don't know, because I got interrupted like 9 times. So we've cleaned the contacts on all of the pots and that stuff, and all the pots and the sliders. Put contact cleaner in them and slid them around. Now, that's one fader board. There's 2 channels on that fader board. That means that it's a 24 channel amp, or a 24 channel mixer, so there's only 11 more boards just exactly like that I have to go do. Yay. Okay, so now I'm going to jump on this section. This is the main master board, and it's a little grubbier. Try to wipe it off as I work. Basically, it's going to be the same process, but I have to go a little slower on a few spots because there are some oddball caps. Like this one here is 100 mics. I think that one's also 100 mics. And instead of the bright looking baby blue Nichicon 22 mics, there are some darker ones here. So this board was probably assembled with a different batch of components just at a different time, but there's a few different ones here, and there's some larger or higher value, the 100 mic caps that need to be done in here. So basically same deal. I'm going to try to mark a few different caps off here, just mark their positives, and then try to desolder about 6 of them. 2, 3, 4. And to find the positive on these, you just basically find the speed bump, and that's the positive. So if you just always put the speed bumps to the positive side, you'll be fine. The other way to do is look, and you can mark the negative, and the arrows on the cap will always point to the negative. But depends whether you're visual or tactile, and I tend to work in the dark a bit, so I'm more tactile, so I prefer to do the speed bumps. Okay, so back to desoldering. Try to do. Now, what are those 2 dots? That's strange. There's 2 dots of solder here that I don't see that do anything, but our cap is going to be here. And I didn't get a good draw on that one. I was having such good success before, and then I turned the camera back on. There's a good one. A little bit of slag. When using a desoldering tool like this, just remember, never squeeze the bulb above the board. Or if you do, do it really, really slowly. Because the last thing you want is a bunch of stray gunk solder blowing all over your board. That's especially true with tiny boards. This is fortunately not a tiny board, and it makes it a world of a lot easier to work on. This one little corner, I'm not 100% sure desoldered. Yeah, that did. That's good. It's good. It's good. Sometimes, even though you get the solder off of them, they kind of like to stick to the pad, so I always kind of like to flick them a little bit before I pull them out. Okay, now despite the fact that this is not the powder blue like before, that's a 2225, which is there, and this should also be a 2225. When I say 2225, that's 22 microfarad, 25 volt. So 2225. Those are Nichicons just like the powder blue ones were, and they really are no different electrically, I don't believe. So here's two 2225s. Respect the dots and put the speed bumps the right way. But unlike whoever was working on the line at Peavey, I am going to try to put the values in a legible position. So in the event that I flub something and I have to come back and fix something, I don't have to wonder what value that cap was. I can just read it. And why did I not bother to wipe the dirt off? Should just be wiping the dirt off as I go here. Wipe the dirt off while you work. It's silly. And as soon as I pause the camera, I'm going to keep going here and working. I'll probably just turn the music back on, because I usually do listen to some music while I'm working. Nothing too crazy, so no death metal or anything. But last thing we need is YouTube to get their knickers in a twist over me listening to music. Copyright strike, copyright strike. Do one more. And one of the other questions you hear sometimes is, how do you know where this stuff is on the bottom of the board? And you can usually tell just by kind of doing a quick visual eyeball measurement. So yes, I have goofed. In fact, I did goof on this project. I did suck the solder off of a Zener diode earlier. But it's no big deal to quickly put a touch of solder back down on it. This one's being a little bit of a squirrel. There we go. Pull that out, and that is the 2.250, which is again our most common cap in this board. So grab one of those. And since we marked the positive there, for those of you at home that want to do this kind of thing and you don't have a desoldering tool, just buy one. They're cheap. Okay. When I was training to do this, we had the vacuum-powered Pace soldering kits. They were terrific. Absolutely loved them. I mean, they were terrific units. But I ended up being a computer guy rather than being a electronics repair guy on a day-to-day anyway. And that pretty much shot the idea of owning one of those beauties in the, because unless you're going to use it intensely. But now that I'm ramping up my electronics repair, we're thinking about it. get a good solder station, stop using the home user junk. But what's funny with soldering equipment is, even though this isn't great stuff, you get used to it. You get used to how it feels, how long you have to hold it down. You know, you just get the magic touch for that particular thing, and then you can go at it. So this is one of those high value ones. This one is 25 volts, 100 mics. So that should be in this bin over here. Not in this part, but would be over in this bin, or would it be in the other one? Those are more 22s. That should be in here maybe. I'll find them, I swear, they're in here. I'll be over here. Here we go. So we need, what did I say that is? It's 25 volts and it's 100 mics. And if I remember right, that one wasn't available. So the closest equivalent was a 35 volts, so that's 100 mics, 35 volts. You can always go up a little bit on the volts. With a mixer like this, I don't want to go way up above the volts, because as you go up in the volts, now newer capacitors generally take up less space than older capacitors, but at the same time, if I were to put something that were a higher voltage, then it would need more real estate yet. And this particular cap, even though it's a 35 volt, actually is a little bit smaller. So, yay. Okay, I'm just going to continue down, like another 2.2, another 2.2, another 2.2, and I think that's, this one's a 22. I think that's a 22. I think that's, well, this is definitely a 2.2. This might be a 22, and that might be those 22s. These are the 22s. Those are the Nichicons. So those are 22s. That's a 2.2. And that's a 2.2. Okay. Back to work. Talk to you in a little bit. Okay. Good day to everybody. The main master audio board still needs to have the grease wiped off of it, but all the pots have been cleaned and lubed, and all the caps have been changed. So now we're ready to move on to the next thing. After I wipe the grub off of it, I'm going to be doing the VU meter boards. These actually just plug in up here. Plug in right there. There's 2 caps each. Nothing tremendously interesting there. So we're just going to keep doing that. Then we're going to reinstall this board and the other audio board, give it a listen, make sure we're on the right track, and then I'm just going to continue the recapping procedure. So nothing too detrimental. Let's keep having fun. So sorry about the music. I installed the next board and took the next board out. So basically it's going to be the same procedure for recapping these. I've been trying to do them 4 to 6 at a time here, where I'll mark the positives and then pull them and swap them. Exciting stuff. There's a total of 12 of these boards, but so far we are making good progress. The noise level's going down and down the farther. Okay, alright, I'm nearing the end of recapping all of the preamp boards, and I think I finally solved a mystery. Going throughout these preamp boards, a bunch of these boards had dark navy colored 22 mic Nichicon caps in them, but some of the boards had a powder blue Nichicon cap. And that was the case through the whole board. It either had the navy or the powder blue. Same series, it should be same type of cap. But it was blowing my mind. I'm going, where some of these boards are placed, because there were some different pots too. Most of these boards have Alps pots, but there's some that had something different. And I was fuzzing my brain, I'm fuzzing my brain. And actually I found at one point during the day, and this board is right here. This is the board. This is the one. This board is the day and the moment they ran out of powder blue, navy blue over there. Powder blue on one side, navy blue on the other. This is the day that they ran out of one color and went to the next. So I didn't think the solder was not original. It looked all original. But apparently, whatever day this was assembled, they ran out of one color shrink wrapped cap and went to the other one. They're the same brand, model, and value and everything, but the color changed. And I guess this board having half and half explains why. Neat. Okay, as we're winding down, let's just take a look. I'm installing these audio boards back. There's still one board left to recap. I did not take them all out, I did them 2 at a time. But essentially, to get these boards off, you have 20 nuts and then 2 screws. And that board with 2 channels on it will drop out. Now we come underneath, there's essentially, back there I've got 2 boards out. You see the 2 rear plugs there. There's 2 pair of them. Those go back to the inputs. And then there are 2 that go on the side there. Those are the ones that you'll find in the middle of the board for power. And then the audio connector goes to this large ribbon right here. So we'll be plugging those back on and screwing those back in, and then she'll be ready to go. Well, despite that we won't be doing any more recordings with it this evening or anything, it's too late for that. It looks like the project here with the Peavey is complete, I think. I'm just talking into a mic to make the VU meters bounce because it looks cool, but other than that it serves no function. So I'll put the mic down. But I figured the vintage headphones seemed appropriate to go with it. But let's just take a look around real quick. Now that we got her together, we've got our main outs and monitor outs, pre-fade listens, headphone level, pre-fade level, so when you push a pre-fade button, how loud that's going to be in your headphones. Effect A master, which is the reverb. Effect B master, which is whatever you put in the loop. And technically you can put something in the loop for A and override the built-in reverb. Reverb to monitor B, effect, which is effect B to monitor B. Effect to monitor A, reverb volume. You can pan your reverb and your effect, so you can put one in one channel and one in the other. That's what these 2 pan knobs do. They're actually below the reverb sends, but the main A and B channels are directly below it, so that's the only thing that's slightly confusing. And then we go to just a regular mixer channel, and we have our main pan here for left right, pre-fade button, our equalizer. These right here, the grays, are the effect sends, so basically reverb and other effect. I got a couple of knobs that are missing their color buttons, but only a few. Sends to monitors and gain. And we do have our peak light and our signal light. So pretty cool. This one is going to need some lamps. I'm going to get some lamps for it because we have a lamp dimmer, so this is going to get old school incandescents to go with it someday when I get around to it. On our outboard, now that I've had a chance to look around, we have a tape out, which is well, there's a tape out, and then there's line A and line B outs, which are, there's like a stereo out. Effect A and effect B out, effect return, so that's where you put your loops. There's a foot switch to kick the reverb on and off, so if somebody wanted to talk to the band or talk to the audience between songs, you could just foot switch it off, which is kind of cool. It's easier than grabbing for the knob all the time. There's a summary, which is both channels together, and you have those on XLR too, balanced. There's monitor B, monitor A, sum, main A and main B. And you have them in balanced or not. Phantom power for your microphones. And yeah, I know these connectors look a little roached, but I promise you it's just surface. These things actually connect perfectly, and I haven't had any kind of signal issues. I can stick a cable in here and wiggle them around and it works just fine. These are old Switchcrafts and they still work. The screws that are holding this down to the chassis are new. The original screws that were totally roached and the holes were kind of ripped open, so I had to go with a slightly larger screw, number 10 machine screw, and that's working good. But this is a 24 channel mixer with 24 XLRs. 24 channel mixer with 24 XLRs. That is something you don't see. Go to your local guitar center and get a 24 channel mixer, and the dumb thing will have 12 XLRs and a bunch of stereo ins for your computer or something. You know, they weren't geared for real live sound like they were back then. And you know, I've had people ask me why I went to all of this effort to put 350 capacitors in a quote-unquote obsolete mixer. Well, to me this isn't an obsolete mixer. I mean, what does any mixer do? It takes multiple sounds and puts them together and outputs it, right? And well, this does that very well. It's built like a tank, and it has an analog spring reverb, which I think is way cooler than any digital reverb ever. So I just don't want to fall victim to being the guy that every year I have to go and run and get in line and shell out for the new shiny thing. And we have plenty of music companies and companies that make anything that sell the new model of whatever they produced. It's supposed to have new features, and you know, they get you to shell out your money, trade in your old one, get rid of it, and then you find out that the new one didn't have something your old one had that you liked. So I love that this mixer has big knobs. It's very tactile. Everything feels nice. All the faders and the pots and everything are good quality. They're you know, everything feels really good on it. It sounds fine. Recapping it seems to have cured the noise. I don't hear the noise at any significant level, and when we plug this into the computer in the next few days to make a few recordings, then we'll decide if we need to go back in and do any more work. But I don't think so. I think we're good. But just a really, really cool mixer. When I wanted to get a new mixer for what I had, because I just had a smaller, I think it was like supposed to be a 12 channel, which meant it had like 6 XLRs. Thanks, you dumb goofballs. You know, it was insignificant for what I wanted to do, and this is overkill for what I want to do. But you think about it, if you have a project studio where you like to record ideas and things, if you've got a drum set, that's going to be what, at least 5 channels? In my case, like 8 channels if you have a big drum set. That's a third of a board this size. That would, heck, a little board wouldn't even be able to handle that. So I can hook up my drum set to this thing and just leave it hooked up, and then hook up my guitars and stuff, and I can leave this stuff hooked up for a while. And if any idea springs to me, I can just pick up my instruments and make some noise and record it. Other things I did is I did shoot the bottom half of the road case here. I have not addressed the top half yet, but the bottom case got a quick coat of paint just because the aluminium was really scuffed up, and I replaced some missing screws down there with some other screws to hold it in. And here's, just for fun, there's the original screws that held the mixer into the cabinet and on my lovely carpet, and they are totally roached, so those are going to end up in the bin. But yeah, so there it is, and it works. Just really cool. The other thing I really kind of wanted in a new mixer is I really wanted an American mixer. And where are you going to find an American mixer? I mean, if Alan Heath and Soundcraft and stuff are proclaiming that they are a British sounding mixer, what does that mean? All the other mixers you're going to find at Guitar Center are Chinese sounding mixers? Yep. So this is a American made mixer made in Meridian, Mississippi. And recapping it wasn't bad. It was all through hole design, so not too terrible. But some of the blokes working that day really folded those leads over and made a really good mechanical connection. It makes it last, but it makes it tough for the guy that comes behind you. So I figure this will be good for another 37 years or so. at least 30. Generally, caps after 30 years is when they get volatile. But 30 years from now, if I don't own this anymore and somebody else does, which I don't know, I hope I can still make music and make noise and all that stuff. But the next guy who gets in this, if they do get in this, hopefully they'll look at the job and say, huh, this has been recapped in 2017, and well, it looks like they did an okay job. I've watched all of you technicians on YouTube, and I love you dearly, and I don't want to hear somebody like Dave from Dave's World of Fun Stuff to go, oh, it looks like they soldered this with a spoon. I don't need to hear that. But I'm sure every other technician would have picked a different model cap or would have changed this value or that value. I'm not an electrical engineer. I replaced everything with the factory values, with the exception of going up in voltage on one cap just because of the availability. But out of roughly 350 caps, they're all the original values except for one. And if there's still any noise creeping through, we might bump the ones in the power supply a little bit, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. Okay, so enough talking and showing over this. Thank you for watching, and I will catch up with you in the next few days when we have some recordings of some of the cool stuff we have here at my little laboratory. We have our Leslie speaker I wanted to be able to capture some stereo clips from, and our various amps and pedals. Now we'll be able to capture those in stereo and give you some real sound clips for a change. And you know, it's cool. Yes, it was not cheap. I bought this mixer for $125, which sounds cheap, but when you turn it on and all it does is make hideous buzzing noises and a little bit of sound, that's disappointing. So I have many hours of work in this and about $150 in capacitors and other miscellaneous supplies. So I will figure I probably put $175 into this board to make it operable, but I think it's worth it. I've seen people trying to sell boards like this for parts and asking $1,000. Of course, they're not going to get it, and then they drop the price to $700, but because this thing weighs a ton, unless you're going to pick it up locally, it isn't going to happen. Cosmetically, there still is some paint damage and nicks and everything else. I straightened the metal out and got everything to fit back together. But I don't want to cosmetically make this thing look perfect because I think it wrecks its mojo. If this thing's been used for 30 plus years, and it's definitely been on the road, it's seen a lot of places, so I'm going to just imagine that some really, really cool people played on this. You know, maybe this was at some Cleveland venue, and the Ramones played through it, or it went on tour with Blue Oyster Cult, or I have no idea. Or, you know what, we're from Cleveland, so maybe Steely Dan took it on tour. I don't know. If anybody has any idea about this mixer from the Cleveland area and can tell me the history, that'd be cool. Oh well, enough rambling. Thank you for watching. It's a Peavey Mark III 24-channel stereo mixing console from 1979. Made in Meridian, Mississippi. Back when Peavey still made stuff in the United States. Okay, bye.